Hi, this is Mike Poirier with the Titanic International Society, and we are continuing our on-the-road travels. And today we are going to talk about the 105th anniversary of the sinking of the Empress of Ireland. And one of the survivors had lived in Rhode Island for a good portion of his life. His name was Clayton Burt. He was born in Lynn, Massachusetts, moved to Rhode Island, married Carrie Eddy of the Rhode Island Eddy family, and they had children here. And his career was of an auto manufacturer and designer. So he worked for local companies here, such as Brown and Sharp, Potter and Johnston, and of course he moved on to larger companies such as Pratt and Whitney and the Russell Motor Car Company. And his dealings overseas is what brought him to take the Empress of Ireland. But just to get a look, here is Mr. Burt in his passport photo. And so on the 28th of May, 1914, he boarded the ship as a first-class passenger. His dining room companions were the famous actor Lawrence Irving and his wife Mabel Hackney. And as Burt would later point out, that since they only had a few hours aboard the ship, when tragedy struck, when the Storstad hit the Empress of Ireland at almost 2 a.m. in the morning on the 29th, most people had very little idea of the layout of the ship, where the staircases were or where life belts were to be had. But Mr. Burt had actually slept through the collision because it was a gentle blow. And he awoke in a few minutes later when the dishes from his cupboard fell to the floor. And of course, he found the floor at an alarming slope, and he went outside, saw that things weren't right, went back, put on his suit, and he was lucky to find a life belt on the ground of the deck. And he also helped others put on their life jackets, and he advised the Irvings, who he saw on deck, to put on theirs as well. And keep in mind, the Empress of Ireland sank in 14 minutes. So this happened very quickly, and he climbed to the high side of the deck, climbed over the rail, and before you know it, the ship was right over on its side at a 50-degree angle, and it just hung there for a little bit. And then when there was a large explosion as it was getting ready to go down, Mr. Burt dived into the water and only got a few feet away when he was sucked down, but thankfully he rose back to the surface, and he found a suitcase floating, so he floated with that, and he helped a young woman by the name of Tyria Townshend, who was struggling in the water, over to the suitcase, and they clung to that till they were rescued. So he had quite an experience, and he came back to Rhode Island to talk about it, and but he moved on, and he continued with his career in auto manufacturing as the director of the Automobile Manufacturers Association. And he finally came back to Rhode Island at the end of his life to take over the directorship of Potter and Johnston, but unfortunately he had a stroke, and he spent his remainder days in Hartford, Connecticut. But he actually had gone to school in Vermont, and that is where he's buried. And thanks to Paul from Find a Grave, we see he has just a basic flat stone, and he died in 1957. But it's such a sad event, that only 4 children survived. And we've, in fact, the last survivor died in 1994. There wasn't much opportunity to meet many of them. But, here at Titanic International Society, we have had special issues for anniversaries and whatnot, and try and, of course, so people will remember such a terrible tragedy. But that's the story of a local man, and I hope you'll join us for our next on-the-road adventure, wherever that may take us.